Hello, it's March 23rd, and it's an A day if we were still in school. Today's the 6th day of the COVID-19 school shutdown, and this is actually video number 4 for me, and I'm praying to the cats that I worship that this video is slightly better than the other ones I've made. We have been moving full-fledged into distance learning across the country. Teachers have been doing everything they can to try to find some way to connect with their students. This video is part of my feeble attempts to do that as well. And I hope that students, whether they're mine or not, have been able to take something from these videos, something from all of these attempts at digital learning, at distance learning, and be able to actually learn and get a benefit. If nothing else, hopefully we are all learning the importance of patience, the importance of perseverance, and the importance of determination, because when I talk to colleagues, when I read stories of educators and students across the country, what I see are great examples of determination and perseverance. And perhaps that might be the greatest lesson we all learn over the next couple of weeks. So for this video, I wanted to focus on imagery. For my students at Highland Middle School, I've set up a digital learning setup on Schoology that they can access, and the focus for today would be to read the short story, The Flowers by Alice Walker. And the very first piece would be to look at imagery within the short story. And imagery is one of those things that is very important as a writer to be able to develop, and as a reader to understand, to see what it does to the story as a whole. And imagery is the usage of vivid and descriptive language to help a reader create a mental picture. It is language that appeals to one or more of the 5 senses. And just as a quick recap of the 5 senses, and I'll use my stupid hand here. First one would be the visual sense, right? Our sense of sight. Next one would be the auditory sense, our sense of hearing. We'll move on to olfactory sense, the sense of smell. And then going along very closely with olfactory would be gustatory, which would be our sense of taste. And then lastly, our tactile sense, our sense of touch. So when writers try to create imagery, they attempt to include as many of those different senses as possible. And they do it through pulling up images, pulling up descriptive language that most of their audience can have a connection to, right? So maybe they'll write scenes about, a basement that is musty and damp and dark. And while on the surface that seems like a very visual focused image, people who have been in basements like that know that there's a very strong and specific smell associated with that. In fact, anybody who's had a basement like that knows that smell right away. And it doesn't really matter where you are. I mean, that's pretty much cross-cultural. People can get that smell. Likewise, imagery of fields or outdoors, whenever they're mentioning specific plants or trees and so forth, you have those actual visual ones, both with the colors and shapes and things, but you also get the senses of smell, right? Between the plants, right? Like pine trees or flowers, but you also get the sounds associated with those things. And in certain cases, the texture, right? The touch of certain things. So if you're walking through grass or something, or through the woods and branches are touching your skin, right? So it's appealing to multiple senses, right? Think about the imagery of a beach. So if you've ever been to a beach, and it doesn't really matter where, if it's a sandy beach, right? There's the sense of sight between the color of the sand, the water, waves, right? The sense of sound, the waves hitting, and possibly the different types of birds, particularly the beaches I've been to, seagulls, and the specific noise they make. And taste, right? If it's an ocean beach, that salty taste from the water is a pretty powerful piece of imagery there. So again, the more pieces of imagery you can appeal to, the better. And as a writer, for students, particularly if you're just starting off trying to use this, you want to make sure when you're trying to use imagery, you're using things that have more of a universal appeal. you don't want to use something very specific without thinking about if your audience is going to be able to connect to it, right? So if you have a very specific experience, particularly like in your house, and there's this very distinct, smell or sound that you associate it with it, your audience might not know what that is. So you have to take that in consideration. As an exercise for people with imagery, I always try to have my students do something that I usually refer to as the box of doom, partly because I'm weird, but also because it adds this little sense of mystery, wherein I have them try to describe something without naming what it is, and try to describe it using words that appeal to each of the 5 senses as much as possible. Try to get as many descriptions as possible. And it's a great activity for you to practice if you want to develop yourself as a writer. So an exercise you can do now is to pick an item, right, from anywhere in your house, preferably. It can be outside in your yard. You can look around wherever you are. Try not to go too far because, social distancing and so forth. We shouldn't be putting ourselves at risk. But find something and try to describe it as well as possible without ever naming what the item is, right? And the way to set it up is to create a page with 5 columns, and at the top of each column, put each of the 5 senses, and then try to break down your description like that. And do that practice over and over, right? Describe different things. And if you have a family member that can participate with you, it's even better, because then you can read the description to them and see if they can guess what it is you're describing. And it's a great exercise to build your ability to write descriptively, to use imagery, and it can also be turned into a fun game. Think of it like a more literary focused version of I Spy. And eventually it can be turned into something to annoy siblings if you're so inclined. Try it out, give it a shot, and think about how you can expand it and use it into your writing and see how that works. I think that should cover it for today. Again, thank you for tuning in. And as always, if you want to ask me a question, you can email me. I'll make sure this time to actually put it in the description. If you have anything you need to tell me, email me. If you have any suggestions, you can leave a comment. I did try the DSLR, but I had some issues where my little tiny tripod things are too weak to hold it up, and it doesn't, the built-in microphone doesn't quite work for it. So I've got to work on that. That's actually right there. You can kind of see it, and just barely out of frame is also my Switch, which I've been hard at work building my home in Animal Crossing while I'm not doing work here. So hopefully everyone is fine and doing well. Remember, it's important to stay engaged both physically and mentally. So, try these little exercises, try the imagery piece, give it a shot. You can share it with me. You can email me your little descriptions. You can even try to test me, email me out what you have described and see if I can guess it. And it's a good practice. So until tomorrow with another video, and hopefully slightly better than this one, I hope everyone's doing well and have a good day.